Use Agile for SEO testing with Luis Rodríguez from Uber. Brought to you by Majestic, I'm David Bain and this is SEO in 2022. Luis, what is your number one SEO tip for 2022?
Hey, David and everyone. Yeah, my tip number one would be to start implementing SEO, Agile mentality, and integrating those two into the three different focus areas. My first focus areas would be around testing. And I think that during the last year and probably moving forward, it's very important that you define your own best practices. I think that longer of titles, amount of content in your page, amount of links coming in, coming out to your page, it's something very for your domain. You need to determine that. And the best way to do so is with quick testing. We've been developing what we call testing velocity, in which we are being very scrappy into testing different concepts, innovative approaches to a title, to constructing content, for example. And I think that has given us the path to start creating our own set of best practices. Once again, I want to make a stress on that part, because it really depends on your domain. There are different strengths, there are different approaches that you've been taking, and your structure is probably going to be very different to any other site. So determine that, do it fast. That's really important. And continuous learning was probably going to be another part.
So Agile is a process for managing a project that involves constant collaboration and working in iterations. So how often is it important to involve other people in the thought process of what you're doing? I.e., how much time should you spend just focusing in on the work and getting it done before you actually talk to someone else just to see if you should pivot slightly?
From my perspective, the inception of any SEO project needs to collaborate all the time from the beginning, probably. Since you're starting to create a strategy and how to determine that implementation path, it's going to be important that you involve your engineering teams, your science teams, your data teams. And actually, I would believe that this is something that needs to be integrated within the project itself. Shouldn't be really a consideration if you need to touch base or when to touch base. It's a constant learning process that needs to be fed by different teams with different expertise.
Great. Okay. And you were going to share a second way of using Agile, I think, as well.
Definitely. So more than how to use it, I would say a focus areas that everybody should have would be around technology. I think that one of the biggest frustrations for SEOs is generally not having tools to play with, either your CMS or your data, your dashboards. And I think that one of the best ways to implement an agile mentality into the technology part would be to have to work with what you have. It's really important that you're currently using everything and every single data point, every technology that you have at hand to implement your projects in the fastest way. The second part would be to evolve as you need. Sometimes we really want to have fancy tools that work with this and that have a specific UI that gives us everything in a dashboard, quick and easy. But in reality, I believe that it would be key to use your resources as you actually do need them. If you're facing a blocker, if you're trying to launch a test that will involve having different sets of technology, that's the moment in which that step needs to be taken. And as well, I believe that having a collaborative approach towards building technology, it is probably a key part in 2022. I think that developing your own tools internally would be a tremendous enabler, or at least it has been for us.
So you're working in a relatively large organization. Is what you're saying appropriate for smallish teams, or is there a certain team size that you have to be in order to take advantage of agile working?
No, I would say that this applies to any size of teams, and specifically the smaller, the more agile mentality should have. I think that the less resources you have, the more balls you need to kick off at the same time. The more restrained your MVPs should be. So I think that it's a matter of making sure that your resources are being used constantly, and regardless of the size of your team or the size of the company itself.
Okay, so if an SEO is listening to this, watching this, reading this, and they feel that they've been a bit rigid in terms of approach in the past, they've perhaps had maybe a 3-month or even a 12-month plan, and they've just focused on implementing this plan without changing it too much, and they want to consider using Agile a little bit more. Maybe what are a few areas that they can focus on initially to test the value of working in an Agile manner?
Definitely. So I would say that one would be focusing into your process, like exactly are you taking care of all of your projects? How do you launch them? How do you actually bring this information to the table, and start creating the plan to get there? I think that rigidness is not necessarily a value that I would implement a lot in SEO. Generally, the constant changes in the algorithm or the constant changes in behavior of people, especially now during this pandemic time, it's definitely changing how we are using search or what we mean when we search something. So quick iterations of your plan, having a very defined vision, but a restating path towards that vision would probably be a good way to implement Agile into SEO.
Would this not be more challenging, though, to take to board level and actually say, our plans have changed, we don't want to do this anymore? Do top level executives not look for a little bit more consistency in approach?
I think that they're looking for consistency into the goal, into where are you actually going, what is your vision, not necessarily the path to there. At least at Uber, it's a very dynamic company in which we know that tomorrow we will have an X amount of blockers more. And there's the need of redefining that path that takes us in the fastest, most efficient way. So no, I would say that generally for leadership, it has worked quite well to define properly our vision, to have a strong foundation and data backing up where are we walking towards to. But if we go to the left or to the right or a little bit more straight, then I think that's the right approach. Always change is always constant, but particularly in SEO.
Okay, great. I'd like to talk a little bit about quick wins that can be achieved by SEO testing, and maybe SEO testing in an agile way. So what are some quick wins that an SEO could perhaps make by iterating quickly? I'm thinking about maybe very specific aspects of SEO, but I don't want to put words in your mind.
I would definitely take a look at your titles. So, we all know that they're important, they're one of the top ranking factors, etc. But are you getting the true 100% value of your title? Sometimes, for example, length is not necessarily something that is very fixed. You can have a wider length and actually have a higher performance. Play a lot with the format of your title. So is it all caps? Is it between different courgettes? Is it with dashes? We've been finding that a lot of these little indications or little format changes can make a significant difference. In Japan, for example, people are used to see everything that is highlighted between courgettes. So I think that Agile and fast testing has allowed us to quickly see the results of that and understand what is the scalability and implementation of that part by literally adding one character, not even a keyword change. Obviously, it didn't require a heavy SEO research, but definitely a lot of observation of what is happening in the SERP.
Can you talk a little bit about the technology that you're using to actually conduct these tests? Are you using your own platform? Are you using SEO on the edge? Are you using something else in order to maybe test perhaps even millions of URLs at the same time?
Yes, definitely. So I would probably split this into three parts. So on the process side, we are working heavily on smart sheets and particularly on one area that they call workspaces. So a workspace allows you connect different spreadsheet systems, web pages into one single UI that allows you basically just to change tabs within the same tab and be using different tools. So that's one part. On the actual implementation side, we use a lot of different spreadsheets that connect to basically the back end of our system. So that's what I was suggesting with evolve your technology as you need it. So far, using spreadsheets that we hand over to engineering or that we actually upload into a CMS has been quite good without the necessity of having a specific UI or a UX that helps us out doing this perhaps more intuitively, but definitely not faster. So that's a second part. And we do have all of this is in-house. So we have been working quite closely with all of our technology partners in which the CMS is in-house. We are basically acquiring a lot of data from different services that allows us to create our own dashboards and our own measurement for these tests.
Okay. It sounds like what you're doing here is a core part of your own role within Uber. I mean, as a percentage, would you say it's a very significant part of your role? And how much time, maybe on a weekly basis, monthly basis, should an SEO really be thinking about testing and testing in an agile way?
In the way that we are set up at Uber, my focus is 100% on growth and testing. So that's literally every day. And that involves probably two parts. One is the inception and the innovation part, like creating ideas, making sure that you're constantly feeding a pipeline of different experiments. And the second part is how to evolve all the processing technology that we have. Generally, our tests are going to be as complex as our technology allows us to make them. So that would be kind of like the split. And then, my advice to everyone would be make this a significant amount of your time. Creating ideas, exploring how you can maximize what you already have should be a core part of everyone's week. I wouldn't dare to say how much you should spend on one or the other. I think that both health, the core side of things, and infrastructure is extremely important for SEO. Nevertheless, maximizing what you already have, it's going to be a profitable use of your time.
So if you're doing a test to change titles, how do you measure success? Is it on click-through rate through to that page? Is it on time spent on that page? Is it on purchases or some other metric?
I think it's always a combination of metrics, right? I think that there are different experiments that have different goals. So there are goals, for example, when you're already ranking in position number 2 or 3, you're probably aiming doing something to do more click-through rate improvements, right? And I think that at least on our side, we try to create a balance between what are the SEO metrics that we can have, like sessions, rankings, click-through rates, but also how these tests are contributing to the business. So there's always a money component there. My suggestion, and going back to that part of how to present this to leadership, generally leadership will understand revenue and will understand how you're contributing economically to the business. So having the ability to showcase these experiments is always really good. And then on the measurement side, generally we are working with control and treatment. So it's a really data, it's a really analytics-driven process and approach that we are having. So we are confident about presenting, $1 extra into one experiment specifically.
Brilliant. Okay, so you talk about the leadership team understanding, which is great. What about content teams, non-technical content teams? If you want to test something maybe on page that maybe takes away from the way that they want to present the content on the page, how do you persuade them that doing the test is the right thing to do?
Yeah, definitely. One of the biggest blockers is to control opinions and to control how the brand is presenting itself and what words are actually involved into that. I think that the way that we are presenting this to them is one is a test. So it's not necessarily a full-blown rollout that you're doing into your entire site, which it's always cautious. That's always a very convincing factor. The second part is that we are actually basing our research on data and benchmarks, basically. So if our competitors is able to drive further performance by using X or Z word, why wouldn't be able to? I think that a very convincing argument is we need to play to level the play field. If we are not able to compete by using different types of words, different styles of writing, perhaps, we are never going to be successful, at least on the part of SEO. I know that the content teams are always very cautious about, the tone that they're using. And sometimes the tone is not necessarily the best when you're adding search phrases or long tail keywords. But once you have showcased the value, and that's where testing comes kind of together, you're able to present the monetary value that your idea has. And there's very little arguments to say, no, don't bring more money to the company, regardless of whatever the brand guidelines are. It is a very interesting topic to navigate. And I honestly believe that this is something people will have to figure out according to your own teams. at least on our side, we own the content on the site. We own that part. So generally, that conversation can be skipped because we know that the tone of voice can probably be less impactful than ranking better for a highly searched keyword.
Great. So you're obviously an advocate of SEOs spending more time on Agile SEO testing. If an SEO has been spending over the last few years too much time on a certain thing, and you would want them to actually spend more time on Agile, on SEO testing, what's that one thing that they need to stop doing? They need to spend less time doing because it's not as valuable now as it used to be?
Sticking to your plan. I would really suggest people don't stick to your plan a lot. Plans generally change according to the algorithm, according to the trends, according to your own business. So don't marry your ideas. Always make sure that you're listening more to the data and to the results that you're having than actually to what you have put into paper. What is most important is that you achieve your goals, and the goal should never be executing a plan or executing a specific project.
Superb stuff. Luis Rodríguez is Global Growth SEO Lead at Uber. Luis, thanks for being part of SEO in 2022.
Thank you very much, David.
Check out the rest of the content from SEO in 2022 over at SEOin2022.com.